Hello, good evening. It's been a while, and to be honest, I was waiting for a subject where I can share some of my thoughts. So, tonight we'll talk about the Farms Bill 2020. So, we'll address this into three parts. The part one, I'll talk about what these three farm bills are all about. The part two, we'll talk about that who is protesting, why are they protesting, what their demands is. And the third part, as always, we'll talk about what could be the way forward, what could be some of the solutions which we can think through. So let's go straight into what these three farm bills are all about, right? So the first bill is called the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act of 2020. So the key word is the promotion and facilitation. The second bill is called the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act of 2020. The key word here being empowerment and protection. And the third bill is called the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill. So we'll talk about the first bill, which is what I'll keep calling as the Promotion and the Facilitation Bill. The bill permits any intrastate or interstate trade of the farmers' produce beyond the physical boundaries of the APMCs. APMCs are Agriculture Produce Market Committees, or popularly called as mandis. So prior to this bill, all farm produce could only be traded within APMCs by the authorized, legalized vendors. And for doing that, the government used to charge cesses and certain fees for the APMCs. Now, what this bill says is that anybody can trade even outside APMCs. The corporations, the private companies, the private sector can directly come and purchase from the farmers outside the APMCs as well. And one other thing of this bill is that now the state governments cannot charge any fee or the cesses for any trading which is happening outside the APMCs, right? So essentially what it's doing is it's encouraging the private sector. It gives the options to the farmers theoretically on the papers that now they can go with the best buyer and they don't have to be confined only within the physical jurisdiction of the APMC. So on papers, the law doesn't sound that bad. Well, it's a free market proposition which is going on. That's the bill number one. The bill number two is called the Empowerment and Protection Bill. And what basically it does is it creates the framework for contract farming. What's contract farming? Basically, it's an agreement which the farmers can get in with any of the buyers, especially around the price point negotiation of what their produce would be even before the produce has been done, right? And whosoever gives the best price, the farmers can get on an agreement with these third parties, right, or with these private players. And the very important feature of this bill is that in case of any disputes, it's been kept outside the civil courts. So the farmers cannot, or the corporations cannot resolve these disputes in the normal judicial process. In fact, they have created the three layered structure called the first one being a conciliation board. In case that doesn't happen, then the SDM of the region would come for reconciliation and would intervene, and then there would be an appellate authority. So basically, any disputes would be settled within the executive part of the government, and the civil courts cannot be tapped for any disputes regarding this bill. The third bill is called the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill. Basically, just to give you a quick background, the original ECA Essential Commodities Act was created in 1955 by the government to ensure that the production, supply, and distribution of certain commodities, which it classifies as essential, would be done by the government, so that these essential commodities are available to the consumers at fair price, right? So basically, it was an anti-hoarding bill. Now, what this amendment to the bill does is that it releases the government's control. It basically now can delist certain commodities as non-essential, and the private sector can directly control the inventory of these commodities, and the government will only be able to interfere in case of certain emergencies like war, famine, extraordinary price fluctuations, natural calamities. So if there is none of these emergency situations, the government will not be able to have any say in terms of the inventory management of the private company. Few commodities which have been delisted are cereals, pulses, potato, onions, edible oil seeds, and oils, right? And basically they are under two basic categories: perishables and the non-perishables, right? So the perishable items are like potatoes and onion. So for perishable items, the government can only interfere if the price increases by more than 100%. That's only when the government can come and interfere. And for non-perishable items like cereals, pulses, edible oil seeds, oils, their intervention will only if the price goes beyond 50%. So these were the three bills in totality. Now let's talk about what are the people protesting, and which certain population of the farmers are actually protesting. So as you and I know, most of these protests are happening from farmers in Punjab, Haryana, very few from Western UP, but the majority of the protest is from the state of Punjab. Why is that? Before we go there, let me make it very clear that no farmers union across the country is against these protests. So they all are supporting the protest. They all are supporting what the farmers of Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP are doing in Delhi. Although physically we see most of the protests from the farmers from Punjab. Why is that? Because essentially the threat is on APMCs and the MSPs. That because of the privatization of this sector, the APMCs will get diluted, and because APMCs will get diluted, eventually the MSPs are also under threat. Even though the government is saying we'll not touch MSPs and all, but none of the bills very clearly says that the private sector cannot purchase below the MSP, right? So it's not there. So it is really a threat. Now, why Punjab? Punjab, because if you see how the farm produce is done and how the farm trading is done, agriculture trading is done in India, only about 30% of the entire produce is through APMCs. 70% of the agriculture produce is already outside the APMCs. Why is that? It's not that farmers don't want to sell in the APMCs, but the country doesn't have an extensive network of APMCs. The two states which have the most extensive network of APMCs is Punjab and Haryana. In fact, as per the Niti Aayog report of 2016, 100% of the Punjab farmers had sold their crops in APMCs at MSP. Imagine, whereas the country's average of trading through APMC is 30%, the farmers in Punjab is having 100% of the trading through APMCs and at MSP, because government predominantly purchase cereals at MSP from APMCs, which is wheat and rice, and Punjab grows bulk of this, and they are able to sell all their produce through APMC. It's a very well established, successful model of APMCs, hence they had the most to lose. The other states are not that vocal in this, because they to start off never had that high quality of APMC network as Punjab has. So that's why one of the reasons Punjab is at the front end, is front-ending these protests. Now let's, I tried to summarize and give it a thought that what these three bills have actually done to the agriculture industry. I call it a triangulation of the agriculture industry by these three bills. So the first bill, the promotion and facilitation bill, has basically introduced the corporate sector, the private sector. They can produce anywhere, purchase anywhere outside the APMC, and eventually it will put a huge strain on APMCs. They will dwindle out, because outside APMC you're not paying any tax. If you trade inside the APMC, you will be paying tax. So why would anybody trade inside the APMC? So it will dissolve predominantly. The second is, when you have introduced the privatization, there is no dispute mechanisms available. It is available, but it's unbelievable to see that you can't take disputes to the civil courts. In my opinion, that's a violation of the fundamental right of every citizen to seek judicial access. How can we have a dispute which is non-cognizable even in the civil courts. That's unheard of, in my opinion. Right? And the third triangulation point is that now basically the private sector can hoard anything which has been delisted as the essential commodity, and the government will not interfere. The analogy which I think of is that APMC is like government schools and the government hospitals. They are obviously not perfect. There's a huge amount of investment in the infrastructure requirement out there. But rather than strengthening our government schools and government hospitals, imagine if we tomorrow come up with a law which says that henceforth all government schools and hospitals would be privatized. They would be run by corporates, private sectors, right? So it defeats the very purpose of certain elements which has to be part of the social responsibility of the state, right? So that's one. And second part, I was thinking of these disputes, right? Corporates coming in, the big players coming in, they get into an agreement with the small farmer, and which actually happened in Kerala. That let's say a company like PepsiCo comes and says that, you know, we want you to grow vanilla for us because vanilla is one of the most exportable products from agriculture. So because of the export requirements, we are getting into a contract with the farmers to produce vanilla. We all know vanilla doesn't have that big a domestic market. 5 months down the line, PepsiCo, for whatever reasons, because of trade barriers, or any of those things, decides we want to scrap this contract. Farmers have nothing, no recourse available. They can't even take them to the civil court, right? So it's a very dangerous situation we are getting into. Let's now talk about the third part, which is the solution part, or what's the way forward. And initially, I was thinking that the government can do a lot of amendments to these bills, which now they are agreeing to. They should have deliberated all these things in the parliament. We all know how the bill got passed in the Rajya Sabha, which I'll not go into the details. That could be a subject for a separate conversation. But my initial thinking was also on the same lines, that let's amend these laws. Let's make sure that the state governments are able to charge the fees and the cesses on the trading happening outside the APMC as well, so that they can still hold to the state revenues, and it will keep a fair playing ground between the APMCs and the private markets and the private mandis, right? So that could be one. On the second bill, they could have talked about that access to the judiciary is still available. So in case of a dispute, you can take that to a civil court. That could be an enhancement. And on the third, which is the Essential Commodities Act, the amendment could be that there would be more stringent thresholds on price fluctuations, so that the government has still more control on what private sector can hold or maintain the inventory on. So that was my initial thought. But then I really thought, what are these the real issues which the farming and the agriculture sector faces, or has a perennial problem into? And on that lines, I actually researched and deep dive a little more on something called as National Commission for Farmers, which was created in 2004 under the chairmanship of Professor M.S. Swaminathan. And subsequently, that committee was called as Swaminathan Committee, which, and we all know, like, Professor M.S. Swaminathan is India's one of the finest agri-scientists. He is popularly called the father of the Green Revolution. So under his stewardship, this commission was formed to really go into the details of the problems of the agriculture sector and huge farm suicides which were happening, which continues to happen, right? The farmers' suicides. In 2019, more than 10,000 farmers committed suicide out there. So what this Swaminathan committee did was they looked at factors which are most relevant for agriculture reforms in the country. And while I'll not go into the details of all out there, but I must highlight what were the high-level reforms which the Swaminathan committee recommended, right? So number one was the land reforms. The land holding inequality is unbelievable in the country. Top 10% of the farmers in our country hold more than 54% of the entire agriculture land, and the bottom 50% of the farmers only has 3% holding. So you can imagine there is a huge inequality of the land holding itself. Number two was irrigation. Big time opportunity on irrigation. Only 60% of the entire cropped area is actually through the rain fed water, right? And which means only 45% of the total agriculture output is because of the rain fed water, and the remaining is dependent on irrigation. So naturally there was a recommendation to boost the investments in the irrigation sector so the farmers have a more sustained access to the water throughout the year. So irrigation was number two. Number three was productivity. In spite of almost 70% of our population in the agriculture sector, that our per unit farmland productivity is much lower than other major nations who are also agriculture based. So in spite of green revolution, we are still way behind in our per unit area productivity. So the committee recommended investments to be done to boost the productivity as well, creating of more national labs, research, seed testing institutes on those lines, so the farmers are able to produce more with the same land which is available. Number four, and the big one, is the credit and insurance availability to the farmers, especially to the small farmers, right? And we all know that there's a huge issue of formal credit system, microfinancing in the farm sector. The insurance of the crops, of the livestock, of the labor is a big issue. So they talked about moratoriums on the farm loans, talking about the Kisan credit cards, and introducing the entire formal structure to supply the credit and the insurance products to our farmers. Important point which they talked about is the competitiveness of the farmers. And that's where they actually touched on the subject of MSPs and APMCs. So as per Swaminathan committee, the calculation of MSP should be C2 plus 50%. What is C2? C2 is basically the fully loaded comprehensive cost of production which the farmer undertakes. It's the cost of the seed, the fertilizers, the irrigation cost, the power cost, the rental cost, the labor cost, every cost included, fully loaded cost plus 50% should be the mandatory MSP. And the MSP should be introduced on more commodities, not just on the cereals. In fact, the Swaminathan committee recommended that the APMC should be further strengthened, like what they are in Punjab and Haryana and there are other states of the country, rather than dismantling the APMC is what we are seeing. So if we see, if I club it all together, these were the real issues of the agriculture sector. And if you look at these three bills, none of these three bills addresses any single item of this Swaminathan committee findings, right? So which begs the question that what are these bills trying to achieve? Who raised these issues? Did farmers raise these issues? They never raised these issues. These bills were introduced in the parliament in a very iron fist manner. No deliberations, no consultations with our agri-scientists, with our farmer unions. What are these bills trying to achieve? Because our real problems of the agriculture are nowhere mentioned in these three bills. If you glance through these bills, it very clearly says they're actually pro-private sector in the corporatization rather than addressing the real issues of the agriculture sector, right? So in my view, I think the total repeal of the bills which the farmers are asking is the right thing. Amendments to these bills can be done, but would they address the real problem of the agriculture sector? Absolutely not. So in my view, if we have to leverage the private sector, we should use them more on developing the basic ecosystem and the infrastructure of the agriculture sector. As the Swaminathan Commission said, we need a lot of investments in the irrigation side, in the enhancing the productivity side, supplying of the credit, ensuring the insurance of the farmers. That's where we should be leveraging more of the private sector rather than getting them involved into the procurement, distribution and supply side of the things. So that's what I feel, and hence the repealment of these three laws makes most sense rather than we should be focusing on implementing the recommendations of the Swaminathan Commission. Well, friends, that was the view from my window. And do send me your opinions and thoughts. Till we meet next, take care and stay safe. Bye bye.